Nothing is really within your control. You might work to manipulate something external to you and succeed, but everything external is outside of your control because some other force could always undermine your actions. The family and country you were born in, material welfare, health, and the opinions of others are all external things outside of your control. You might work to change yourself and succeed, but everything internal, making up the person you consider yourself to be, is outside of your control, because everything external alters what is internal. Perception, memory, opinion, emotion, and your inner monologue are all technically outside of your control. Everything from brain damage, psychological trauma, and drugs, to diet, exercise, and your environment will affect those internal things. This is important because attachment to anything outside of your control makes you susceptible to discontentment, and desiring that anything should be as you will it, and not as it actually is, leads to suffering. However, the mind can be divided into two parts: what is observed, and the part of you which is aware of the observation. Training your attention on the breath, a sound, a sensation, or some other focal point will separate that inner witness from all other manifestations in consciousness. For example, many view themselves as the thinkers of their thoughts. But with practice, you can see that these thoughts arise spontaneously within consciousness. In fact, we're not the thinkers of our thoughts because we can witness those thoughts coming out of nowhere. Every other thing which is internal to you, such as perception, opinion, memory, emotion, and your inner monologue, we will refer to as the self. There is the witness, or the observer, and there is yourself. The witness of all mental phenomena, that psychological space where everything is observed, is the only internal piece of you devoid of change and free from suffering. Since it is the perceiver of sensation and not the perceived sensation, placing your awareness there means you won't get dragged along by the typical thrashing about of the mind by identifying with it, whether thoughts, pain, or emotion. This is the space and condition which all others should be measured by, and the foundation which needs to be set for all self-improvement. If you're alive, it's there for you. While every other piece of you can come and go, it will be there. The self, on the other hand, enables our survival and motivates nearly every action. If it weren't for the self, we would have no concepts to aid staying alive, and information wouldn't be packaged in a sortable manner. It's useful to view the self as the amalgam of all external influences which is produced after those influences are filtered through your genetic predispositions and senses. It catalogs and makes sense of experience so that when faced with future danger or problems, we can use that information we've built into navigable concepts more efficiently. But its aim is to feed itself, and it grows too large from overconsumption. Eventually, we begin to identify with concepts themselves, instead of the only true reality, experience. We begin to conceptualize ourself, and say to ourselves, I am this kind of person, or that kind of person. These are things I like, or I don't like these things. When we could actually adapt and be dramatically altered in nearly every way by experience and the things we learn. Like a muscle, if the self is exercised and fed, it will grow, at which point it will require more to maintain itself, and its starvation will result in discomfort. When it grows, the division becomes stronger, and our separation from the rest of the world increases, resulting in a lack of empathy and an increase in a variety of conditions stemming from egocentricity, such as neuroticism, narcissism, selfishness, and even anxiety. However, if you can learn that initial step, to sit in the observer seat, the self can be conditioned into a tool rather than a barrier, and accommodate your interaction with the world instead of hindering it. The second step is to learn how various external things are influencing you. This starts by noticing more of what's happening in the present, but tracking can become as intensive as you wish. In time, you will notice many things, but here are some important takeaways. Stimulating activities increase the desire for more stimulation, and less stimulating activities deplete that desire. Reading and meditating train your attention stamina. Sophisticated writing develops greater precision in your inner monologue, and most forms of entertainment will likely increase, though some can decrease, egotism. The final step is implementation. How you do this will largely depend on what you learn about yourself, but it always manifests as some form of self-regulation. You can jump into the deep end, as we often do, to gain a new reference point for what your thought patterns are like if, let's say, you replace all TV with educational reading for a month, or do a seasoning-free perfect diet for a month, avoid lyrical music for a month, or don't speak for a couple of days, or meditate for an entire day. But you can also implement one progressive step at a time, preferably logging it, so you can create a lasting habit. With enough work, you will see just how malleable the self really is. It's not a constant, it's always changing, and you have to aim for the most beneficial change, or your outlook and relationships might only devolve over time, eventually reaching your deathbed as the most miserable version of yourself, having only been dragged down by your activities and perspective. Alternatively, you could improve yourself, and invariably improve the world by that process alone. Just remember to always keep your eye on the objective. To seek self-improvement selfishly feeds the self, our source of suffering. The only good reason for self-improvement is to improve oneself for the world, without whom one would not be, and for whom one came into being.